The ribbits of the wind have spoken of us meeting again. Welcome back to the porch, tadpoles. Brother Bullfrog has got a different topic of the day to bring to this porch chat. I want to talk to y'all about prison abolition. I think that'll be a fitting subject for this current time. Now, to you, my tadpoles, what prison abolition really is, think in a sense of how slavery was abolished, or was abolished. You get me? It's the same concept. Back when slavery was still a thing, very common. People were fighting to abolish that. They were the abolitionists. But in modern day, what we're looking at is the removal of prisons as an institution, similar to how slavery was supposed to be resolved and removed. But the biggest argument with prison abolition is that prisons are just a continuation of modern slavery. Like, that's what we have now instead of slavery. And the book that I read that got me on this thinking about the relationship of prisons in our current society was Are Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis. And she doesn't open the book with this line, but in the beginning portion of her book, she kind of opens the discussion with a question. What would have you think that this world is safer with prisons than without? And when I was listening, that, really stopped me in my tracks, because, why hadn't I thought of it that way? Why hadn't I thought about the fact that the world probably would be safer without prisons or without cops if we had a world where we didn't need them? If we could fix the issues at the roots so that we didn't need these things in the first place. And so what Angela Davis does is first she details the history of, prisons in this country and how they became what they are today. And then she talks about how they are set up to where, crime and the institution of the prisons are very racialized. And it's set up in a way where the government and the country can have their slaves, but not have slaves. Because I need you to understand while we on the porch looking out on all the lily pads. I need you to understand that things don't die. They don't pass away. What they do is when the form is no longer sustainable, they got to take new form. They got to change their name. They got to revamp it some way. Now, I want you to understand the South has a lot of prisons. I'm a Southerner myself. I'm from Mississippi. The South got a lot of prisons, but you also got to understand the South was also, the hub for where all the plantations and all the slaves are held. The enslaved people. We got to fix our terminology. You can't just tell an entire portion of the country that has propped their economy up on black bodies. You can't do that anymore. So what they do is, they write the Constitution. They say you can't have your slaves unless they are being punished. You can't have anyone enslaved unless it is for a punishment for a crime. So now the terms crime and punishment are interlinked. This is something Angela Davis notes profusely in her book. She tells you how these are two terms that have become interlocked, one with the other, crime and punishment. And so now that you have crime interlocked with punishment, you can have your slaves back if they're being punished for something. So you just need to get them in those prisons. And so what she details how in California's, history of 100 years from, I think, the late 1800s to the late 1900s, only like 9 prisons are built to contain people. But once Reagan steps up in the office and he brings his war on drugs and he builds a very race-neutral profile of a black person to sell to the American public as a criminal, he's able to move millions of people into jails. And one thing Angela Davis says in her book is, if you had told her, 30 years ago, which I'd say at the time probably would have been within 1970 or so, I think, that in that time that America would be capable of putting millions of people in the jails so easily that that'd be a sign of rising fascism. That wouldn't even be able to happen because surely the American people would stand up if that was happening. But no, because Reagan starts telling people that, these people these criminals are coming into your neighborhoods and they're harming your children and your families, these welfare queens. And so what he does is he builds a profile of a black person without saying black, without the colors, and then he demonizes that profile so that it's so easy to discard black people and put them into jails and anyone that also fits that profile. And I mean, it's even easier to put people in jails when you have laws that put people away for drug possession and drug use. And so instead of putting them in facilities to get them clean, to get the drugs actually off the streets, you just put them on the streets and put all the people away that are using and being abused by it into jails. You can profit off of them and have free labor, and people will want them off the streets because you sold it to them that those are the criminals that are coming after their children and such. Instead of fixing the problem at the root, they build their criminals in the prisons, essentially release them back out, and then just make more. I mean, because you do not know of a recidivism rate? Like, people that'll go into jails end up somehow coming back. Not really even somehow, but they set it up to where you really can't get a good job, definitely not allowed to vote, and you're not permanently stained in society as, a convict or felon. And so it's going to make it harder for you to navigate this world in ways that are supposed to be legitimate and legal when people don't even want to associate with you. So you're essentially left outcasted by society, having to pick up the pieces, hoping you don't get put back in jail, because it's either jail or nothing, because this world really won't give you a second chance. And you got to understand, with a lot of crimes, it's not even the violent stuff that people think it is. Like, more likely than not, people that are in jail are not in there for violent crimes, the crimes that they sell to you as the main reason that they have prisons in the first place. Like, you got to understand, they have to inflate the threats of this world to convince you that we need prisons. It's kind of like a weatherman over-reporting rain so that he can still be seen as useful on his job. Because, I mean, if there's not a lot of rain, then why do we need a weather guy? That sounds messed up, but you kind of get my point. If the world's not that dangerous, then you don't need prisons. But they need to make you think the world's that dangerous. So they're going to make it more dangerous and then sell it to you that it's far more dangerous. That easy. And what we're looking at in this era is a rise of, like Angela Davis had said, fascism. Because you've got a government that has now told the American people that there are immigrants within the country that are taking jobs, eating animals, and killing citizens. And now we have a new scapegoat to blame to put into these facilities that are going to extract them of labor for free, prop up our economy, and the government doesn't have to fix anything. They don't have to do any work. All they have to do is just put people in other places and force them to do shit instead of fixing things, because that costs money. It doesn't make money. I need you to understand that. That's why. And so people will say the system is broken because there are bad people doing bad things within it. But no, a lot of the times these systems are built to exploit it for money. That's how this country works. Every path in this country is for the sake of making money. It's crucial. It means no matter what path you live in life, whatever you do, it will make the government money, whether you win or lose. House always wins. And after reading this book, it kind of reminds me, it doesn't remind me, it kind of twists me up in the head a bit. I mean, I can't even get my words correct. You hear me talking. I've got the porch lively with stutters and stammers. But it definitely makes me look at my own heritage and the way I view prisons differently now. Because, I mean, people see prisons the same way they view hell. Anyone that commits a wrongdoing written in law should be punished. But a lot of times, the things that they've done, do they really deserve a punishment? Sure, it's a crime, but does it warrant a punishment? Oftentimes, it doesn't. And so people start to view prisons as just another world other to them that they would never step foot in. I mean, people within prisons even refer the world of citizens as the outside world, the free world. That, when they enter that prison, they've lost their freedom. That's how they refer to it. So you've got to understand, the prisons of modern day are the slaves of yesterday's antebellum. Because the enslaved, they still need their enslaved people. And we've been giving them up in the forms of prisoners. And I guess it's like, after reading that book, it really changed the way I was seeing this whole thing. Because, I mean, it's not like it can't be me. It could very easily be me. It could be someone else. And with the conditions in this country, it's damn near illegal to be homeless. So, I mean, you've now got an underclass of people either predestined to become those enslaved, or they are branded biologically, well, not biologically, been branded because of culture and skin as to be enslaved. And that just makes my skin bubble. I mean, it makes my melanin itch. No way I was born into this world with a path damn near set, limited to where I'm going to make someone else money and I get the scraps or I get to starve. What do you mean scraps or starve? I should be grateful for scraps. I mean, if I were to teach myself how to hunt, I'd have far more. I shouldn't have to depend on someone who threatens me every day with starvation. But that's how we live now. People kind of accepting their situation because they have children, they have jobs that if they even stop for a second, they would pass away. Not literally. I mean, obviously, to keep it 100, beanie weenie, no barbecue sauce. There are niggas dying of starvation, but I mean it in the sense of, you can't really take a break from work. You can't take a break from any of it because even just for a second, if there's a bill you miss, a day at work you miss, everything falls apart. That collective irritation that I've been trying to talk about, I mean, like, there's no way y'all don't feel it too. Like, there's no way we have entire graduating classes of people kind of realizing this is it for us. We're just going to serve you and you're going to laugh in our faces like this is just how we're meant to turn out. I'm not saying I deserve to be the main character. I'm not saying I deserve to be the hero. But I'm saying I'm not a dot in a pointillistic painting. I get to be a picture too. I get to paint myself to be whatever I want. But the society breeds and encourages sycophancy. And the complete giving up on the self. It's as if, I guess, it's almost built in a way where they'll have their slaves, like I said. And that's a bit depressing. That it's been so easy for us to disregard other people because we think that it'll make our society better by just leaving them behind. But the truth is, a lot of you, why are you not seeing that if they can be left behind? You slip up just like them. You'll be out too. Sometimes being empathetic isn't just about other people. It definitely is about the self as well. It involves the self. And a lot of people, there are arguments against prison abolition. Don't get me wrong. There are people that'll bring up the more violent crimes. You can't just release a bunch of people. I mean, there are murderers, rapists, and killers, in jail. You can't just release them. And of course, you are not wrong. There was a lot of people view certain acts as, well, people can't just be reformed from that. But you got to realize the majority of people in these jails are not in there for those crimes. But actually, I'd like to tell you a story that my pops told me of his time as a CO. Because my father was a Marine. He was a police officer at one point for a small town. And he was a correctional officer at one point. Remember, like I told you, Mississippi has a lot of prisons. He tells me of a story where a shift he didn't work. There was a button malfunction on one of the for like all the cells in the blocks. He described it as being almost tower-like because there's different tiers, different floors. But a button malfunction must have happened, and so all the doors and all the cells swing open. And this is during the times where these COs are supposed to be counting and accounting for their prisoners. Making sure that they're there in their cells, present, alive, not doing anything crazy. They do this, I think, every hour or so. They do it on a consistent rate. But during these checkings, these, tallings of prisoners, all the cell doors swing open. And there is a guy, he describes him as big white man. Menacing dude. I think he was in there for like a few murders. Like, this is a motherfucker you're not supposed to mess with. Like, you feed him with a stick and maybe a hazmat suit and something to match. But he gets out of his cell and he just starts fucking shit up. I'm talking about he's going floor to floor to floor to floor to floor, fucking people up. And at the end, he's killed 3 COs. Well, damn. And I need you to understand, a story like that you would think would be in support of the idea of a prison. That guy got out and he fucked everything up. But I also need you to understand, most of the people in jail are not that guy. And second, you can't just put a killer away in a habitat like that and think that over time they're just going to get better once they are out. Because as you've been shown by that malfunction, at any moment, a threat that you've let stew will be let out to hunt. Nigga was left out hungry. That doesn't absolve him of what he's done. I mean, the guy just went killer, berserk. But that wouldn't have happened if you would actually try to reform your killers and robbers in the first place. If you had actually done the work to make sure that they wouldn't become worse people. I mean, and we can bring up the death penalty, because to be honest, it doesn't help the families of the victims. It doesn't help the state. When we saw Marcellus Williams get executed, well, we didn't watch it for ourselves. God, no. Ancestors forbid. But Mike Parsons needed that execution to happen. Because turns out the journalist that they accused Marcellus Williams of killing was investigating Mike Parsons. So it's like, if he had allowed for Marcellus Williams to live, that would have for sure reopened an investigation on what she was investigating on Mike Parsons. He needed that man to die. That was his personal vendetta. And I bring that case up to show you that a lot of the times, the men on death row that are getting killed are typically not innocent. The death penalty is just for show. It's just to scare people. But it's not even a good deterrent. It's a good deterrent for people who wouldn't normally commit crimes. But it wouldn't fix the problem at the issue of making sure that they do not happen. That's just an end-all, be-all for those who just, you still let them out here kill. You get what I'm saying? A lot of people on death row aren't even guilty of their crimes. Like, you got these niggas sitting out here for 40 years to get executed. Whole time they were innocent. You tortured them and then murdered them after. Jesus Christ. Like, what are we talking about? And so the main thing with prison abolition, which is, in some way an extension of prison reform, is that the things currently are not working. You could argue all day about, oh, well, you can't just do all these changes. You really can't. Are you really going to allow a killer to be reformed and be redeemed? I mean, it's the prisons we have are not helping our society. They're not. And so it's like, we can argue all day about the differences between the systems that are, in theory, existing and the ones that we have in practice. But the practices we have people dying in mass, starving, and forgotten. So it goes to show there must be a change. I do not think that is wrong to state. Not at all. But I would like to expand more on my father's role as a Marine veteran, a CO, and a police officer at one point. Because it's still going to be ACAB all the way. And you probably wonder, like, if you were to have a belief like that, how do you grapple with your father's involvement? And the truth of the matter is, plainly put, I think the only good thing a police officer can do is take off that blue or die in it. And in my father's case, he was wearing that blue and got sick. Doc told him, yeah, my nigga, you can't work no more. Like, your body might actually be fucking up to the point, like, you can't be, you can't work no more, G. Like, that's how it is. And so, like I said, the only good things you can do is take that blue off or die in it, because there's no good you're doing in it. There may be good police officers, I guess. You got a good character, but at the end of the day, I can't differentiate between a Nazi who's there because he hates Jews and a Nazi who's, well, calm down. A Nazi who's there because he hates Jewish people. A Nazi who's there because he hates Jewish people. Or a Nazi who just cares for Germany a lot. Like, I'm sorry, my nigga. Y'all both wearing brown shirts. Let me keep it 100. And so in this case, with my father's role, I mean, he has to grapple with that for himself as well. I mean, like, because the government tossed him out. The government does not care about their veterans. The government will sooner throw a party for a dead vet than an alive one. They forget about their alive ones. They'll do anything in their power to not give them VA benefits. And the thing is, I know people that are black like me and their parents do have VA benefits. But there are many veterans that are just left without. They're told that their trauma, that their injuries, everything they've gone through after the fact has nothing to do with them. And it's pre-existing condition. And so it's like, if you're willing to discard the people that you have had serve directly under you and prop you up through they do your brutality for you, and you toss them out, you will toss your citizens out too. But it makes sense because I heard someone put it so greatly. They toss their veterans out because to give them the best, I mean, you be giving the people with all the tools to overthrow you better treatment, and then they could overthrow you. That's why they don't treat their vets well, especially not their black vets. And this is, as a topic as a whole, it's a lot to talk about. The idea of getting rid of prisons, the involvement of black people in police. Because, I mean, at that point, you're just a modern-day slave catcher. That's not even really a joke. That you slave catching. I mean, police officers used to be slave catchers. No different. It's a lot to talk about. I mean, really, it is. But the thing is, the stuff that I talk about is really nothing new. I think the issue in this world is that, granted, a lot of people like to complain that, yeah, most of the world is explored, so there's nothing left. But you haven't explored it yet. Someone else has. They can speak for themselves. You have to go out and pursue it yourself. All these things that I talk about, whether it's black brutality, the brutality of black bodies by police, by institutions, or just other things in general that have to do with the social climate of this world, you can find those things out. They're not, a lot of the times, it's not even a secret. You just didn't flip the page to read it. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's always there. But nah, it's a shame already, man. I forgot my tea. I didn't even bring it to this porch chat. I don't got nothing to sip on this time. No way to really break up the tension. Well, whoa, not that type of tension. It's more than just us on this porch. You know what I'm saying? I want to segue to something else to talk about. Because I do want you to kind of peep my Patreon, you know? It's an easier way to support me if you want to directly. I want to, now that, you know, TikTok is back and such, according to today's recording, I can make the content I used to make. I can be more widespread. And this time I don't want to do it wrong. Because now I do know this social media stuff is not permanent or forever. Because they took that away from me so quick. Like, that's a personal vendetta. But hopefully, if you do want to support me, there are different tiers. You don't have to pay a lot of money. You can pay like $1. So, you know, anything you got, I'll take. You can laugh at a nigga for begging, but truth be told, we are all begging. I'm no better than the last beggar. I just have maybe slightly better clothing. That's it. But I'd also like to point you into the direction of my comic Eat Kings on Webtoon. It's a bigger project than I realized it would be, you know, for one black dude to make comics about black people. It's a lot more work than I thought. But if you like to read something to pass the time, maybe laugh, or to grow your mind a little bit, you can read it on Webtoon. It's got quite a bit of substances on there. So thank you.